Life has a way of throwing challenges at us when we least expect it. In today's story, Emma Parker, a successful lawyer at a prestigious firm, finds herself betrayed by the one person she thought she could trust, her own sister. But what seems like a devastating setback turns into an opportunity for Emma to rise stronger than ever. Follow along as she navigates betrayal, trust, and the power of resilience. If you're ready to hear how this journey unfolds, make sure to subscribe to our channel and join us for today's life story. My name is Emma Parker, and at 32, I thought I had everything figured out. I had built a successful career over the past 8 years at Harrison & Company, a prestigious legal firm known for its integrity and high-profile clients. I had always prided myself on being a reliable and ethical employee, someone the partners trusted to bring in major accounts and handle delicate matters with the utmost discretion. But that was before Sophie, my younger sister, decided to destroy everything I had worked so hard to build. It all began with an innocent meeting with Stephen Bennett, the managing partner of Harrison & Company. The mahogany desk in front of me felt colder than usual as he sat there, shuffling papers, avoiding eye contact. His unease was palpable, but my mind was already spinning with confusion. Something didn't feel right. "Emma," he began, his voice heavy, "the evidence of client information leaks is substantial." I sat frozen, gripping the armrests of my chair so tightly that my knuckles turned white. My gaze shifted toward the glass walls of his corner office. And there, just outside, I saw Sophie standing near the water cooler. She was pretending to fill her cup. But I knew the truth. She was watching the scene unfold, savoring every moment. It was as if she had orchestrated this entire situation, and I was nothing but a pawn in her cruel game. "Emma, the evidence is quite clear," Stephen continued, his voice now laced with disappointment. "Client details were sent from your email account to competing firms. The timestamps, the digital trail, it's all here." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I had never, in all my years at Harrison & Company, betrayed the trust of our clients. I had worked tirelessly to foster those relationships, to build a reputation based on integrity and professionalism. Why would I throw all of that away? Why would I risk that? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady despite the rage building inside me. "I've been with this firm for 8 years. I brought in half of our major accounts." Stephen didn't answer, but I saw a flicker of doubt in his eyes. For a moment, I almost believed that he might give me a chance to explain, to defend myself. But that hope was short-lived. "I'm sorry, Emma," Stephen said, his voice cold now. "But given the sensitive nature of the situation, we need to handle this quickly and discreetly. Security will escort you to clear your desk." His words hit me like a punch to the stomach. I wanted to protest, to plead with him, but I knew it was pointless. Sophie had already won. She had framed me with a fake email trail, manipulated the timestamps, and carefully crafted a story that made it look like I had been leaking client information for months. As I stood up, I glanced at Sophie again. Her perfectly styled blonde hair gleamed in the harsh office lights, and the smirk on her face was impossible to ignore. She had always been clever with technology, and now she was using that skill to bring me down. I felt a surge of anger, but I didn't let it show. Sophie had underestimated me, just as she always had. "Can I at least see the evidence?" I asked, trying one last time. "I'm sorry, Emma," Stephen replied. "We can't do that. You'll need to clear out your things immediately." I stood up, gathering my things as I felt the weight of the entire office's gaze on me. Whispers filled the air, and I could hear my coworkers discussing my sudden fall from grace. "Did you hear? Emma Parker, the quiet one, the one who brought in all the clients." Sophie hovered nearby, clearly enjoying every moment of my humiliation. As I packed my personal belongings into a cardboard box, I couldn't help but notice the satisfaction on her face. She had planned this meticulously: the fake email trail, the altered documents, the fabricated timestamps. It was exactly the kind of detailed scheme Sophie had always excelled at. But she didn't know what I had already figured out. 3 months ago, I had started noticing small discrepancies at work. Meetings were being rescheduled without my knowledge. Proposals were being altered after I had submitted them. And client communications felt off. At first, I thought it was just office mix-ups. But something in my gut told me otherwise. I had learned long ago that Sophie's smile often meant trouble. She had done this to me before. And now, she was doing it again, only this time. She was going too far. As I placed the family photo in my box, I couldn't help but think about the call I had received from Marcus Chen, one of our biggest clients. His voice had been full of concern. "Emma, something's wrong with our account," he had said. "Documents are being altered after our meetings. The numbers aren't adding up." I had reassured him, as I always did. "I need you to trust me for a few more days. Marcus, can you do that?" And he had. We had built a solid relationship over the years, based on trust and results. It was a relationship Sophie could never understand. One that had made her resent me for years. She had always been jealous that clients specifically requested to work with me. Not her. As I packed my coffee mug into the box, I couldn't help but smile. It wasn't just a coffee mug. It was a gift from my first client. Painted with the words, "Trust the process." Hidden at the base of the mug was a small USB drive, containing evidence that Sophie had never anticipated. "Need any help carrying that out?" Sophie's voice dripped with false concern as she approached me. "It's the least I can do for my big sister." I straightened up and met her gaze. "No thanks, Sophie, I think you've done enough." Her smile faltered slightly. She had expected tears, pleading, anger, anything but this calm acceptance. Sophie had never understood that true power doesn't lie in the attack but in the response. And this was my response. The game had only just begun. And she would soon realize that. As security escorted me out of the office, I allowed myself a small smile. Sophie thought she had won. She thought she had destroyed me. But what she didn't know was that I had already started planning my comeback. The next few hours felt like a blur. I left Harrison & Company with a box in hand, the weight of everything I had worked for seemingly slipping through my fingers. As I stepped into the crisp spring air, I was acutely aware of the harshness of the city around me. The noise, the chatter, the busy streets, it all felt so distant from the quiet, controlled world I had spent years cultivating inside the office. I got into a taxi and set my mind on the only thing that mattered now: what Sophie had done. She had manipulated the evidence with such precision, framing me in a way that made it almost impossible to deny. But what Sophie didn't realize was that I had been watching her, anticipating her every move. I had been raised with her. After all, Sophie was always the clever one, the one with the technology skills, the one who knew how to pull the strings. But I had learned long ago that being clever wasn't the same as being wise. Sophie thought she was winning. But in reality, she was making a crucial mistake. She had underestimated me. And I was about to prove it. That evening, as I arrived home, the apartment felt oddly peaceful. A sleek, modern space on the 20th floor, with stunning views of the city skyline. It was the kind of place that had been a dream come true. A reward for the years I had spent working tirelessly at Harrison & Company. But now, sitting in that space, I felt an overwhelming sense of emptiness. Everything had changed. I could hear my mother's voice in my head. Her words filled with disappointment. "How could you betray the family?" she would say. But what had I done? I had built my career with integrity, while Sophie had torn it down. And yet, it was I who had to bear the brunt of the blame. I went to the kitchen, the hum of the coffee machine breaking the silence. As I prepared a cup of espresso, my mind kept drifting back to the phone call I had received from Marcus Chen just days before. Marcus, one of our most loyal clients, had called me to express his concerns about discrepancies in the documents. He had trusted me, and I had promised him that I would fix things. And I would. The USB drive that Sophie hadn't noticed hidden in my coffee mug had been my ace in the hole. She had planted her trap, thinking she would finally have me cornered. But I had been a step ahead. While she had been busy framing me, I had been gathering the evidence that would eventually expose her for who she really was. It wasn't just about saving my reputation anymore. It was about something far bigger. Sophie had crossed a line that I could never forgive. But more importantly, she had betrayed the trust of so many people. And now, it was time for her to face the consequences of her actions. I had already made my move. The evidence I had collected was damning. The USB drive contained not only the proof of Sophie's sabotage, but it also held the key to a much larger story, one that would implicate not only her, but also James Porter, the hedge fund manager she had been working with. The insider trading, the manipulated trades, it was all there, laid out in front of me. Sophie had been playing a dangerous game, and she had no idea that she was about to lose. I glanced at my phone as it buzzed with a new message. It was from Marcus. "I hope you're doing okay. Let me know when we can talk." I replied quickly. "Dinner at 7? Marcus had always been a smart businessman, and I knew that he would understand the bigger picture. He wasn't the kind of person who would let something like this slip by unnoticed. We had a bond that went beyond business. He trusted me, and that trust was something I couldn't afford to lose. As I dressed for dinner, I thought about everything that had led me here. The years of hard work, the subtle sabotage from Sophie, the betrayal that had come from the one person I should have been able to trust. But life had a way of throwing curveballs, and I had learned that sometimes the best way to deal with those curveballs was to hit them back with everything you had. I arrived at the restaurant, a trendy spot in the city, and found Marcus already seated at our usual table, but it was his companion that made me pause. Next to him sat Helen Wright, CEO of Wright Global Ventures, one of the largest investment firms in the country. I had heard of her before, but never imagined I'd meet her under these circumstances. "Emma, you know Helen," Marcus said, standing up to greet me. "She's heard quite a bit about you." I shook Helen's hand, noting the firm grip and the appraising look she gave me. There was no mistaking it, she was sizing me up, just as I was sizing her up. "By reputation only," I said, trying to keep the conversation light. "It's a pleasure to meet you, Ms. Wright." "Helen, please," she replied with a smile. "I've heard a lot of good things." The dinner began with casual pleasantries, but I could tell something deeper was coming. Marcus cleared his throat, leaning forward as he spoke. "Emma, I understand today has been difficult, but there's something you should know." Helen nodded. "While your sister was focused on framing you, you've been collecting evidence, haven't you?" I didn't need to respond. Instead, I reached into my purse, pulled out the USB drive, and placed it on the table. "I've been watching, Helen, and I've been preparing," I said, my voice steady. Marcus's eyebrows shot up. "What's on that drive?" I gave a small smile, knowing I had finally gained the upper hand. "It's not just about Sophie's lies. It's much bigger than that." As I placed the USB drive on the table, the weight of the moment hit me. I had spent years building relationships, fostering trust, and proving my worth in a firm that had once believed in me. Now, all of that was at stake. And yet, in this quiet restaurant with Marcus Chen and Helen Wright, I felt a strange sense of calm. Sophie had set the trap, but I had been the one who would ultimately walk away with the prize. Helen leaned forward, her eyes sparkling with curiosity. "You've been tracking her, haven't you?" she said, a note of admiration in her voice. "You were one step ahead the whole time." I nodded slowly. Sophie never understood that the game isn't won in the first move. It's about thinking 3 steps ahead. Marcus exchanged a look with Helen, a silent understanding passing between them. They knew what I was about to say. I had seen it all. Every unauthorized access to my email account, every altered document, and every fabricated timestamp, all pointing back to Sophie. But what they didn't know was the most damning piece of evidence, the bigger scheme Sophie had been involved in, insider trading. I wasn't just collecting evidence on Sophie. I continued, my voice steady. "I've been tracking her connections to James Porter, the hedge fund manager. She's been leaking inside information to him, manipulating trades for months." Marcus's eyebrows shot up. His interest peaked. "Porter, you say?" "Yes, Porter, and it's all in the data," I replied, feeling a surge of satisfaction. "The trades he's been making, the success he's had, they're all tied to information that only Sophie could have provided him." Helen's eyes widened, and I could tell that her mind was racing. "You've done more than just protect yourself, Emma. You've gathered evidence that could bring down an entire network." Marcus leaned back, looking impressed. And you've been playing along with Sophie, letting her think she won, all while quietly building your case. That's some strategy. It's not about playing along, I said, my tone firm. It's about giving people enough rope to hang themselves. Sometimes, you have to lose a battle to win the war. Sophie wanted to ruin me. She didn't realize she was setting me up for something much bigger. Helen smiled, a knowing glint in her eye. Well, I can tell you this. Emma, you've got a future with us. We've been looking for someone with your insight, your ability to see the long game. And I think you'll fit in perfectly at Right Global Ventures. I could hardly believe what I was hearing. I had spent so many years working hard at Harrison & Company, thinking that I would climb the ladder, that I would achieve everything I had ever wanted in the company. But now, as I sat in this restaurant with two powerful people, I realized that the career I had been building was nothing compared to the opportunity now before me. Right Global Ventures wasn't just offering me a job. They were offering me a chance to create something of my own. You're offering me a position? I asked, almost in disbelief. Helen nodded. A position with full autonomy. You can build your own team, choose your own clients, and bring the kind of ethical leadership that's been lacking in this industry. The offer was tempting, and for a moment, I allowed myself to imagine the possibilities. The freedom to create a team that valued relationships over quick wins. The power to shape my own future, without having to worry about sabotage or deceit. It was everything I had always wanted at Harrison & Company, but more. It was a chance to make a real impact on the industry. To build something lasting. But there was more. As Helen spoke, I realized that Sophie's actions had led me to this point. Had she not tried to destroy me, I would never have found this opportunity. The lesson was clear. Sometimes, the worst betrayals lead to the greatest victories. Sophie's attempt to break me had only strengthened me, pushing me toward a better, more fulfilling future. Marcus, who had been quiet for a moment, spoke again. We're already reaching out to some of your former clients. They trust you. Emma, they'll follow you. My heart swelled. I had always believed that trust was the most valuable currency in business. It wasn't about manipulating people to get ahead. It was about building genuine relationships that could withstand anything. And now, I had the opportunity to take those relationships and build something far greater than I had ever imagined. I think I'm ready for this, I said, my voice steady. I'll accept your offer. Helen's smile widened, and she raised her glass. To new beginnings, Emma, to long games. We clinked glasses, and as the wine touched my lips, I felt the weight of the past few days lift off my shoulders. This was it, the moment I had been waiting for. My comeback was just beginning. And this time, it would be on my terms. As we continued our conversation, discussing the future and the strategy I would bring to Right Global Ventures, I couldn't help but feel a sense of peace settle over me. The storm was over, and I had weathered it. I was ready to build something of my own. Something that would last. And Sophie? She would have to face the consequences of her actions. As I settled into my new role at Right Global Ventures, everything felt different. The weight of the past few weeks, the betrayal from Sophie, and the heartache of losing the career I thought I would build at Harrison & Company slowly faded into the background. I was no longer just a cog in a machine. I was the one in control. I had the autonomy I had always longed for, and the opportunity to shape my future on my terms. The days that followed were a whirlwind of new meetings, team building, and clients who trusted me. Not because of my position but because of the relationships I had cultivated over the years. I wasn't just rebuilding my career, I was constructing something far greater. Each decision I made, each path I chose, felt like a fresh start, a chance to do things differently. To lead with integrity and vision. Then, one afternoon, I received a message from Marcus. Sophie had taken a plea deal, avoiding jail time but losing everything she had worked for. Her career at Harrison & Company had collapsed, and the legal world had turned its back on her. She was forced to start over, working as a legal assistant at a small firm, a stark contrast to the empire she had once dreamed of building. As I read the message, I felt no joy, no sense of victory over her. It wasn't about revenge, it was about growth, about becoming the person I was meant to be despite the obstacles that were placed in my way. Life had a funny way of showing us what truly matters, and for me, it was the chance to rise above. To build something real, something meaningful. And so, with a clear mind and a strong heart, I continued my journey at Right Global, knowing that my best days were still ahead. Life had taught me a profound lesson. Sometimes, the greatest victory comes not from getting even but from rising above. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to subscribe to our channel to follow more inspiring life stories and lessons learned along the way.